This must be sad. The futility of existence. The meaninglessness of life. He continued that tears, sighs, all this is the lot of the living. Someone asked the guy who this grave belongs to. With sadness on his face and an upset tone, the guy said that this was his family's grave. The old man said he understands and it must be heartbreaking. He continued that when his whole world collapses before his eyes, his heart breaks with sadness. The old man smiled and said that he shouldn't worry so much. Having turned into a monster, the old man shouted that he would soon join them. The guy attacked the terrible monster with just one swing of his sword. He destroyed the blades of the monster that thirsted for his blood. The guy with a calm look waved his sword to remove the blood. Behind him they said that Hyakimaru has the same trouble with the next demons, every time. Hyakimaru looked at the reflection in the blade and said that it was him. The old man touched the monster that attacked the guy with his stick. The old man said that these monsters are only a headache. The old man asked if the guy was planning to leave now, and he replied that he would leave. The old man also added that the calm days have come to an end, and from now on he will destroy all the demons on his way. Continuing to peer into the grave, Hyakimaru said that this is not all. Hyakimaru also added that he now has a new desire. The old man asked the guy what wish he meant. Hyakimaru replied that he wants to become a full-fledged person. In the distance the night metropolis glowed, beckoning with its hues. But outside the city there was a camp of old tents where people lived. Some guy looked out holding his hand near a tree. The guy ran up to one of the tents and opened it a little. But suddenly someone's voice told him to stop doing this. A stranger with a long beard stood behind the guy near another tree. The stranger added that he should not wander around here and should return home. He also said that good boys should already be asleep and having their 10th dream at such a late hour. Taking out a knife, the guy asked who told him he was a good boy. The guy shouted at him to answer him, because the local rabble claims that their boss's name is Hyaki. The man replied that he didn't know, but the guy continued to shout that if he was homeless, he must know. People heard the noise and began asking what was happening, and what the dispute was about. They also asked about the puppy who was in front of them, with a knife in his hands. The guy thought to himself that this was actually for the better. Starting to wave his sword, the guy shouted for Hyakimaru to come out, and hurried to show himself. A man in a hood and with bandages on his head looked angrily at the guy. The locals started shouting that it was Boss Hyaki. The guy asked again to clarify whether Hyaki was standing in front of him. The man smiled, biting his lips, and continued to just look at the guy. The guy thought to himself that this was definitely not Hyaki, and suggested the similarity of the names. The stranger told him that he had a feeling that this was not the one the guy was looking for. The homeless man suggested that he leave, because now the guy had seen everything he wanted, and they, like the homeless rabble, also want to sleep. The guy thought to himself that today again to no avail. Someone called out to him, and told someone to look at the guy, because it's bingo. The guy in white said that the young master's grueling game of hide and seek is over. The homeless man was clearly surprised after the guy in white said about the young gentleman. The guy in white said that at least they found Mr. The homeless man shielded the guy and said that he didn't know what was happening, but would like an explanation. He continued that it looked like something that could be mistaken for a kidnapping. The guy in white asked what the homeless man could do to him if his conclusions were correct. The man said that the responsibility of any adult is to protect the child. The guy in white began to joke that in this case, he was obliged to reward them all. The guy in white continued that their young master ran away from home, and he thought that he would return him to his father's house, where it was safe. The guy offered to solve everything in a good way, and the one who grabs and brings the young gentleman will receive the money. The homeless began to whisper that for that kind of money they could eat a full plate of rice with meat tomorrow. They also continued that it doesn't matter if it's the Yakuza or someone else, the main thing is that they pay money. People looked with an angry look at the guy they were willing to pay money for. They attacked the guy saying to grab him and bandage him. A moment later, the guy was already rolling all tied up with ropes. He fell right under the very feet of the guy in white. The guy in white shouted that he was very grateful, and this was their promised reward. People attacked money like a herd, forgetting about all humanity. Suddenly, the guy was grabbed by the neck, and it became difficult for him to breathe. The guy in white said that he resisted for so long to finally be caught. He let down her hair, which was spinning in different directions. Homeless man asked himself if she was really a girl. The guy in white started licking the girl with his tongue. The girl shed tears and asked for someone to save her. The homeless man said there was something else he was interested in. The guy in white asked what beggars might be interested in. A moment later the homeless man attacked the guy in white, so that he would let the girl go. Homeless man grabs girl away from guy in white. He asked a homeless man what came into his head to do this. With a small knife, the homeless man began to remove the ropes in which the girl was. The homeless man asked what he wanted from this brat. And poking his knife at them, he said that they were not even people. The guy turning into a monster said that no one has the right to touch his beautiful skin. The bodyguards and the guy himself began to turn into something terrible. The homeless man and the girl looked at what the guy was turning into. A snake-like monster with a tongue as long as the guy's appeared in front of him. Panicked, people started screaming and asking what it was. The snake asked how the homeless man dared to force him to reveal his true nature in front of this wretched rabble. Having attacked the homeless man, he shouted that he would tear him into small pieces. The shock wave forced the homeless man who was holding the girl to push away. But despite this, the homeless man continued to retreat from the monster. But the monster took off the hood of Hyakimaru, who was pretending to be homeless. Continuing to hold the girl, Hyakimaru attacked the monster with his knife. But unexpectedly, the blade of Hyakimaru's blade broke after the blow. He threw away the knife and looked at the huge snake that was in front of them. The snake said that Hyakimaru was making noise in front of his nose, like a rat. And opening his mouth, the serpent told Hyakimaru to stand still. A guy with white bandages stood in front of them to create a shield with his body. The monster took the life of the guy whose head was in bandages with one blow. With his tail, the serpent began to squeeze them into a ring in order to destroy them. The girl shouted that a person could not stop the demon. Taking out his blade, Hyakimaru confirmed that she was right. Hyakimaru swung his sword in front of himself. The snake, looking at the guy, said that he knows this blade. Hyakimaru did his hand and moved his fake hand behind, which was hiding a blade. Hyakimaru stood in front of the huge serpent with complete determination. Hyakimaru jumped on the monster, and the snake said that this guy. The snake did not have time to finish, and Hyakimaru cut the snake, which threatened his life. With his two swords, Hyakimaru put an end to the monster and destroyed the snake. The girl said in surprise that he was Hyakimaru. Hyakimaru said that's right, his name is Hyaki, the one she was looking for. The image of a cute little dog began to emerge from the clay. Hyaki said that he calls this little friend Maru. Hyaki also suggested that they talk to her in a more suitable place. The girl said with anger on her face that she had finally found him. She shouted that he was the one who destroyed her parents. The girl attacked with a cry that she would destroy him. In the past, it was a rainy night, and the girl's family was leaving somewhere. Father angrily told Roro and Mom to hurry up. Roro asked why they were going somewhere in the middle of the night. Suddenly, Roro's phone fell out of his hands and fell down the stairs. Roro went to pick up the phone, while her mother and father were putting things in the trunk. The father said that all things have been collected, and the baby sits down first. Turning around, they did not find Roro, who was a couple of seconds ago on the stairs. The mother wanted to scream, but the father stopped her because he saw something. Before them appeared the image of some man who was heading towards them. It was a guy with white hair and red eyes. The father said in fear that Hyakimaru was heading towards them. Roro's parents were surrounded on all sides by Hyakimaru's assistants. The father shouted to be let go, and not to be separated from his family. Later, standing in front of Roro's parents, He asked where she was. The parents were silent, because they themselves did not know where their daughter was. Taking something out of his coat, he said that if they don't want to talk, then there's no need. The guy added that dealing with old people is always a hassle. The guy pulled his finger off the trigger and shot Roro's mom. He also said that, to be honest, he doesn't care about them at all. Enraged, the father decided to take revenge for his wife and attacked Hyakimaru. But the assistant put the father of the family to the ground with one blow. After a while, he asked again for the last time about where she was. The father continued to remain silent, knowing what would happen to him, and looked away. He saw his daughter Roro in the distance, who was all in tears, hiding behind a tree. Finally, the father smiled with thoughts that his daughter was alive. The guy pulled his finger off the trigger, thereby destroying Roro's parents. Out of hopelessness, Roro continued to cry, because she had lost her loved ones. Hyakimaru ordered his assistants to burn everything here. He also added that not a single trace remains. After a while, he was already looking at the house, which was all on fire. In the present, it was raining at night, and there was a tent in the middle of the forest that was well lit. Roro felt someone lick her cheek with their tongue. Opening her eyes, she saw Mara in front of her, who was licking the girl. She stood up and also saw Hyaki, who was sitting and preparing something. Hyaki turned and said that she had finally woken up. Unable to contain her anger, the girl, seeing him, shouted to Hyakimaru. Suddenly, there was an awkward silence between Hyaki and Roro. Hyaki told her not to freak out, and he's sure she doesn't have much strength left. Roro asked Hyakimaru what she was doing here. The girl also began to remember what happened before. She recalled how she rushed at Hyaki, screaming that she would destroy him. Roro hit, but Hyaki dodged her and told her to wait. The girl still tried to hit Hyaki, but nothing worked. With one blow to the sleepy spot, Hyaki made Roro fall. The girl looked down with shame on her face. Roro thought that she couldn't land a single blow. Hyaki handed her the canned food and offered her something to eat. He also added that if she wants revenge so badly, then she shouldn't die of hunger ahead of time. With anger on her face, Roro took the tin can from Hyaka. The girl began to swallow all the contents, and Hyaki asked if she needed chopsticks. Her eyes were wet from the food, and her mouth was very hot. Hyaki said, since she called him a sworn enemy, he dares to assume that he destroyed someone close to her. The girl said that he expresses himself strangely, because the first thing people shout is that it wasn't them. Hyaki said that when you live too long, it's hard to remember everyone who lost their life because of you. Roro said that even if he is older than he looks, he can't be that old. Hyaki suggested that Roro is also not an ordinary person. The girl asked how he could guess about it. Hyaki replied that she is now in an unenviable position. He also asked what she would do if he really was her nemesis. The same to images of Hyakimaru that she had seen flashed before her eyes. Roro screamed that it was indeed the same Hyakimaru. Hyakimaru swung his blade in front of the girl. Suddenly, the dog Maru began to bark angrily looking at this. Hyaki's sword hit some invisible creature that was near Roro. The creature's corpse began to fall and Roro screamed in fear. She shouted that he was again playing the role of a killer, but Hyaki replied that it was not a person. Not believing Hyaki, Maru turned to look at the man who had been destroyed. Maru continued to bark, and the image looked more like a zombie than a person. Roro asked if it was a demon, and Hyaki said that some homeless people here are like that. Coming out of the tent, Hyaki added that they are usually calm. They both stood in the night rain, surrounded by a crowd of demons. They talked about how they wanted to eat, and about the delicious smell. Roro said that they are not calm at all, and Hyaki added that they are all strangely energetic today. He continued that there seemed to be something powerful. Hyakimaru turned and swung his blade towards Roro's chest. He said that there is something inside her that makes them forget that they cannot defeat him. Hyakimaru said that he would deal with this a little later. He also added that he will be a little busy in the near future. Meanwhile, in a large city, Windows were glowing in the middle of the night. A man sitting with a woman said that she was talking complete nonsense. He indignantly asked if she was inviting them to work for her. The woman said that she understood that her words sounded stupid. She continued that negotiations in such a situation were necessary, and only complete idiots would agree to such a thing. The woman also asked what they were going to do if they didn't agree. The man hit her head on the table they were sitting at. He also said that she would go and convey to them his words about the declaration of war. The man said that first she needed to fix her arrogant face. He also added that they should do with her whatever they wanted, and when they were finished, they would throw her into the street. His assistants began to talk to each other about how it had been a long time since they had heard anything from their boss. The woman said that she would never get tired of this. One of the boss's assistants fired a bullet into the man's shoulder. The man asked what came over him and what was wrong with him. The woman who was passing by the assistant asked what was really wrong with him. The woman asked again that she was interested in why he did it. She said that fortunately her phone was not damaged at all. The man asked why she didn't tell from the very beginning. The woman replied that it was obvious that she wanted to mock them. She took a photo of the facial expression that was on the frightened man. The woman said that now that she had sent the proof, her work was done. The woman began to leave, and the man began to beg for help and forgiveness. The man was surrounded by his own assistants who wanted to destroy him. Looking at her phone, the woman enjoyed the screams of that man. Suddenly, someone called the woman and she was surprised. She said it was very unusual because he doesn't call her often. She was told that the snake had been destroyed, and the woman laughed, because he behaved arrogantly, and he deserved it. She asked if everything would be okay if she went now. She looked at the girl's photo, and said she was pretty cute. The woman also added that the girl looks very tasty. Meanwhile, Roro woke up in a soft bed, and asked why she was there. She also asked about the dog who constantly slept on her lap. Hyakki Maru came out of the shower, and said that he was so refreshed. Roro asked herself what was wrong with this guy. Hyakki asked if she would take a shower, and Roro closed her eyes, and refused, and added that he should at least put something on himself. Roro opened her fingers a little to look at Hyakki Maru. Hyakki, as if nothing had happened, continued to change clothes. Hyakki asked her to stop staring at him, and added that he had no problems moving. Hyakki said that what was important now was that he managed to find a safe place to stay, and Roro asked why it was safe. She continued that they let in a man covered in blood from head to toe, and she is generally underage. Roro also added that he was the main danger, and Hyakki replied that she was too cruel to the one who saved her. He also added that she followed him to hide from those who attacked her, and because of this, his house, a tent, was eventually destroyed. Hyakki Maru told them to go over what happened again. Hyakki said that at this point he roughly understands what's what, and her parents were destroyed by someone who had the same name. Roro asked him about Hyakki, claiming it wasn't him. Hyakki replied that he did not remember doing such a thing, and Roro asked who he thought it could be. Hyakki replied that in any case, it is somehow connected with him. Hyakki suggested that he help her, but not for nothing. Hyakki added that he will take that thing inside Roro for himself. Roro said that before that she needs to know something about this thing inside her. She continued that it could even be so valuable, so that she and her parents have to suffer so much because of this. Hyakki replied that for some it has no value, but for others it can be everything. Roro asked why he couldn't tell her directly what it was. Suddenly, Maru noticed something at the door, and began to bark loudly. Hyakki looked out the window at a bunch of people, and told Roro to get ready, because they had been found. Meanwhile, the woman said she was so careful, but she was still discovered. She added that she really wanted to surprise her cat. The woman continued that even so, they will meet soon. Meanwhile, guys with bats and hammers stood at Hyakki's door. Hyakki Maru opened the doors, and hit the guy in the face with the doors. He made one of them fall to the ground with his dash. Hyakki said it was so tiring and asked if they were all human. A few moments later, he cut down the guy who attacked him. Maru ordered her to follow Maru and run to the roof. He also added that he will join her soon. Roro obeyed Hyaku and ran to the roof for Mara. Meanwhile, the guys continued to try to attack Hyaku. But literally a few seconds later, only Hyaku remained alive. Hyaku was about to leave when suddenly more people appeared. Armed girls looked at him and wanted to destroy him. Hyaku asked if it was time for them all to go to bed. Meanwhile, Roro ran out of the door that led to the roof of the building. The girl sighed heavily along with Maru, who saw her off. Roro asked worriedly what was happening to Hyaki. A voice asked Roro if she was worried about him. Roro turned around and saw the woman who was admiring Roro. The woman said that she was very pleased to meet the cat. She continued that Roro is cuter in real life than in photographs. Maru rushed forward to protect Roro from the woman. She asked what this dirty and ugly creature was. She kicked Maru and told him to get lost. The woman grabbed Roro and said that they were finally alone. Roro thought about how she ended up behind her, and the woman said she smelled nice. She started asking if this was really happening, because it looked so delicious. Hyaki was already behind them and raised his blade to strike. He attacked her, but she turned over in a clear somersault and remained on her feet. Roro was surprised by the unexpected appearance of Hyaki, who saved her. Hyaki asked her if she was okay and apologized for being late. With a sad look on her face, Roro replied that she was fine, but Maru was not. Hyaki reassured her that Maru would be fine, and he would wake up. The woman said that it was such a shame, because they had not seen each other for so long. Roro asked if the two of them knew each other, and the woman replied that they were friends, so to speak. She said again that they are very, very close and long-time friends. They continued to stand on the roof, as if waiting for something. Roro thought to herself that he didn't blink an eye, even despite her suspicions. She asked herself if he planned to give her away to this woman, and stopped her own thoughts, thinking that she had decided to trust him. The woman said she had some suspicions after seeing what was happening with her own eyes. She asked if he was entrusted with the same order as her. The woman continued her monologue that it took her so much effort to find her. She came to the conclusion that this time she would give up this girl to Hyaki. But there was one condition so that the woman could live with him for one day. She also said that she wouldn't touch anything inside her body, and added that leaving empty-handed would be boring. The woman also asked that before she returned it to him, she would like to know what it tasted like. Hyaki lowered his blade, and Roro looked at him with confusion. The woman said that she knew Hyaki would understand her wishes. The woman approached Roro and said that in that case, she would proceed. Roro thought to herself that she couldn't defeat her without Hyaki's help. She continued that if she tried, it would only provoke her more. But Roro told herself that without knowing what was hidden inside her, she would leave the world without knowing anything. And Roro resolutely screamed inside herself that she couldn't give up so easily. The woman said it was cute that her kitten was scratching. She also added that domestic cats have no self-preservation instinct at all. Turning back, the woman saw Hyaki attacking her. Hyaki threw her off her feet and was about to destroy her with his blade. Woman hits railing after being hit by Hyaki. Hyaki said that thanks to her acting, he was able to catch her off guard. Roro guessed that he was only pretending not to care. Hyaki smiled a little while looking at Roro, holding that woman by the neck. The woman said that she was in pain, and invited him to let her go. The woman brought her hand to Hyaki's red eyes. Something glowed from her hand, and she shouted that things wouldn't work that way. A bright blue light emitted from the roof of the building throughout the city. Roro closed her eyes and asked what just happened. The woman said she had been wondering for a long time if it would work on him. She continued that as she thought, it wasn't enough. The woman added that if he is really going to do it, then it's not worth it. She also told him to look at himself, how well it worked for him, because there were so many cracks. Suddenly, Hyaku began to take out the second blade from his hand. He attacked the woman, but she dodged the blow with the blade. The woman told Hyaki to be more careful. She again decided to use her bright yellowed glow to attack. Roro covered her eyes with her hands, and Hyaki pushed back. Roro asked what was wrong with his eye, and if it was okay, and the woman asked Hyaki to cool down a bit. The woman added that she has no idea why he started this game of bodyguards, being the last person who should be entrusted with such a position. She continued that she liked it and found it funny to watch him make a clown of himself. The woman said goodbye to the kitten and said that she was tired of wasting her time here. Roro asked the woman to stop, because she still had questions. Meanwhile, Maru kept his paw on Hyaki's hand, while Roro fell to her knees. Maru was conveying something with Hyaki's paw and hand. Hyaki brought his hand to his eye, and thus recovered from his injuries. Roro began to blame herself for having missed her chance, so stupidly once again. She began to remember that very night where she trembled with fear. Roro blamed herself, that she wouldn't achieve anything at this rate. Meanwhile, Hyaki put his hand on her, and told her to get up. Hyaki looked away, and said that he would take Roro somewhere. He added that this would be the person who would answer all her questions. At the same time, someone was sitting at the computer, and said that they would finally meet Hyaki soon. Many years ago there was a devastating bloody war. At that distant time human life was not worth a penny. Then there lived one extremely ambitious gentleman. And he was so greedy that he made a deal with powerful demons, desiring unlimited power. In exchange for strength and power, the master had to sacrifice his own son. His eyes, nose, demons took away everything they could reach. Therefore, the son of a power-hungry master was born with nothing. The master left his own child to leave the world, saying that he could have another son at any time. The baby was sent down the river, and everyone was sure that he was doomed to death. But in the end he returned, and in his appearance he looked more like a fancy ceramic bowl than a living person. Growing up, the boy learned that by destroying the demons with whom his father had entered into a contract, he would regain the stolen body parts. So he got the opportunity to return what was stolen even before he was born. And so the boy became a demon hunter, and continues his hunt to this day. The girl continued that this story has a pretty happy ending. Roro sat in a complete stupor stroking her dog Maru. They sat in the studio, which was equipped with various musical equipment. Roro asked if the old man was that old during the civil war in feudal Japan. Wiping away a tear from laughter, she said that sometimes it's hard to believe. Hyaki came in and said that it doesn't matter whether she believes it or not. He continued that he let her know his story because it was important for understanding the following information. Roro asked how he knew what they were talking about, if they were in a soundproof room. Hyaki replied that it was just a premonition, and added that this person would tell her about the thing inside her. The girl offered to introduce herself, and said that her name was Apostle. The apostle added that she is a good friend of this unlucky but handsome old man. She also said that she buys and sells all kinds of information. The apostle said that she was the one who sold information about her to demons. Roro jumped up and angrily hit the table at which they were sitting. Hyaki ordered the apostle to calm down while looking at Roro. Hyaki asked Roro if she would feel more comfortable talking like this. The apostle began to make excuses that she could explain everything about this. She began that he took Mara with him and set out on a journey to find a demon hiding among the homeless. And this guy didn't even carry his phone with him, saying it was too difficult to use. So, the apostle was just sitting and thinking about ways to contact him, and suddenly a teenager shows up looking for Hyaki. Roro told her not to let the apostle say that it was her, and the apostle said that everything was right, it was her. The apostle said that she was the one who told her Hyaka's location, and also passed information about her to the demons. She continued that she thought that if she gave the information to the demons, something fun would happen, and Hyaki replied that something ended up happening. Hyaki also asked why she even started this whole circus, since she usually has no problems finding him. The apostle replied that tracking him is not the same as getting in touch. She added that in any case, everything would definitely be fine if he told her about what was inside her. Hyaki said that she has every right to know, and the apostle exhaled and said that she would tell. The apostle asked if she remembered what she said about Hyaki a few minutes ago, and Roro replied that she remembered that parts of his body were stolen. The apostle told Roro to keep this information in her mind. The apostle said that this thing inside is part of Hyaki. Meanwhile, there was a club party where there were a lot of people. Someone opened the champagne and it started spewing out in all directions. The girls shouted for the woman to continue drinking until the bottom. One of the girls praised her, calling the woman Miss Maki. She also asked what was wrong with her and what was worrying Maki now. Maki said she came across a cute cat on the street, and she bit her and ran away, and someone asked her about the cat's appearance. Maki said with a smile on her face that she was very nice. She also added that she smelled just lovely. Maki also said that no matter how many times she thinks about it, she doesn't want to just let her go. She added that Hyaki is such a pain in the ass. Maki picked up the phone and said that apparently there was no choice left. After calling someone, she said that she didn't really like this guy, but there were no special options. Having reached him, Maki asked if he would like to work with her. The guy standing in front of the monster said that he is a little busy right now. Maki said that she was sure that he was lounging somewhere right now, and the guy denied that he was really busy. The guy added that he had no particular reason to refuse. The guy jumped and attacked the spider demon that attacked him. With one blow of his blade, the guy cut the spider into 2 parts. Maki asked about the noise and the guy said it was nothing special. The guy asked how strong this Hyaki is. Some time later, someone was driving along the highway in a blue car. It was Hyaki and Roro who were heading somewhere. Hyaki asked about Roro's well-being, and she replied that it was just funny. Roro, remembering, continued that after everything she heard, she simply could not sleep. Roro jumped up from the table and said that she had lived a normal life up to this point and was waiting for a reasonable explanation about the reason for this thing inside. The apostle replied that the reason for this was unknown to her, and Roro cried out if she was mocking her. The apostle asked the little girl to turn down the volume because she really doesn't know. Suddenly, Roro's attention focused on the photographs. Roro asked if these were pictures of her parents that Hyaki destroyed. The apostle explained that she did a little digging into her biography. She continued that it wasn't that difficult and her parents were quite famous. The apostle added that Mr. and Mrs. Yamada are a married couple of brilliant researchers. She also added that what is interesting is the lack of any documented information about the presence of a child. The apostle stated to Roro that they were both barren. The apostle continued that this was strange, and asked where she came from. She stated that she thought that it should be there. The stork brought it. Hyaki tried to shut up the apostle and asked him not to talk nonsense. Roro asked her to be more serious, and she has no time for jokes now. The apostle said that no one knows how cruel reality can be. The apostle asked the little girl if she was sure that she would not regret it. Roro replied that she doesn't know, and it already seems overwhelming to digest everything that has happened so far. Roro said she's had enough of regrets now. Roro continued that she wants to know the truth and is not going to go back on her words. She asked the apostle to tell everything that she herself knew. In the present, Roro looked at nature through the car window. Roro said that in the end, she didn't say much, and Hyaki didn't understand what she meant. Roro said that she was talking about the apostle, and the only thing she knew was that her parents secretly adopted her. Hyaki said that despite all her efforts, she could not find anything, so there was nothing more to look for. Roro guessed that all her information must be fragmentary. The apostle said that Roro is so cruel, and in fact she even lent them her car, so that they could travel in comfort. She continued that she even told her the address of the laboratory where her parents worked. The apostle asked how someone could be so ungrateful, and Hyaki asked Roro why she fell for her tricks. He also asked what she needed, and the apostle replied that she wanted to ask if everything was fine with them. She also asked them to bring her a couple of souvenirs, and Hyaki turned off her broadcast. Hyaki exhaled and said that this irritates him very much. Roro said that he keeps up with the times, and considering his age, he knows how to drive, and Hyaki replied that he has been driving since cars were created. Roro asked Hyaki if he had a driving license then. Hyaki began to remain silent, deviating from answering Roro's question. Roro asked Hyaki to stop the car then. Roro started screaming for him to stop the car, and Hyaki asked her to calm down. Meanwhile, the weather in the city was bright and sunny. The car where Hyaki and Roro were sitting stopped near the store. Hyaki got out of the car and said that he would go buy some water. Roro said that who would have thought that he was right, and in fairness, what did she expect from someone who doesn't even have a birth certificate? She also added that thanks to Hyaki, they at least made it to her hometown. Roro noticed the photo booth. She loved taking photos with Natsumi and Haruka. Roro also said that they must have been very worried when she left. Suddenly, she noticed her old friends passing by. Roro shouted and asked the girls to wait for her. She ran and shouted for them to stop at last. Roro continued to run towards them and shouted the names Natsumi and Haruka. Natsumi with short hair asked who she was. Roro said that only a year has passed, and they have already forgotten her. She asked if they recognized her, that this was their old friend Roro. Both friends were scared by the girl's words, that she introduced herself as Roro. Roro said that they had not seen each other for a long time, and asked how they were doing. The friend let go of Roro's hand, which was holding her a few moments ago. Natsumi asked who she was to pretend to be Roro. Roro said that there were reasons for her unexpected disappearance, and Natsumi shouted at her to stop lying. Natsumi stated that she doesn't look like Roro at all, and even her voice sounds different. She also added that Roro left this world 3 years ago. Roro asked what was the matter, because she was alive, and the girl said that she was also interested, because she was not Roro. Roro asked why she says such strange things. Roro felt bad, and held her head, and Natsumi asked what happened to her. Natsumi also asked Roro if she was okay. Roro continued to hold her head, and said that she was fine. She thought to herself that her head felt like it was going to explode. She added that the more she talks to Natsumi, the more this feeling of inadequacy gets ingrained in her brain. Roro continued that it wasn't that long ago that they all hung out together. She asked herself why Natsumi and Haruka didn't remember her. Roro sat on her knees in complete stupor from what she saw. Meanwhile, the beauty of nature wafted from all sides. The guy Maki called stood glued to his phone. Someone suddenly called the guy, and the phone started to vibrate. They asked him what was wrong with his voice, and asked him not to say that he was lost again. They also told him over the phone to stand still. She explained to him that in order not to get lost he must find and remember landmarks. The guy stood in bewilderment in the middle of the forest, peering at them. He asked whether the trees he saw in front of him should be landmarks. Meanwhile, Maru barked good-naturedly with a smile on his face. Maru played with Roro's cheeks with his paws, which looked very bad. Old friends sat together at the table with Hyaki and Roro. Roro was asked where they were, and Natsumi said that they were very scared for her. She continued that Roro suddenly fainted, and some suspicious guy tried to carry her away. Hyaki said that he is not suspicious, and Natsumi stated that such words make him even more suspicious. Roro continued to think about what all this could possibly mean. She also remembered that she was definitely thinking about something important at that very moment. Natsumi stood up from the table and declared that she had had enough, and since she had woken up, they would go. Roro tried to stop Natsumi as she was about to leave. Roro asked if they really didn't recognize their old friend. Both girls were in a complete stupor before answering Roro. Natsumi exhaled heavily and took out her phone from her bag. She held it out to Roro so she could look at something. Natsumi also said that she doesn't know where she has the audacity to call herself Roro, but if she's really at a loss, then let her look at the photo. Natsumi stated that the girl in this photo is the real Roro. Roro asked if she really wasn't the one taking photos with them in the photo booth. Roro said that this couldn't be true, and she should be in that photo. Roro suggested that there might be something wrong with her body, especially since she fainted. She continued that memories can be distorted by even the slightest shock. Hyaki snapped his fingers and asked them to look here for a second. Roro asked for an explanation for his actions, and Hyaki replied that this is simple hypnosis, and people who fall for it once will constantly fall for it. He continued that one of the abilities of hypnosis is the distortion of memories. Hyaki handed the phone to Roro and asked him to take the phone. Hyaki also added that he installed a hacker program there that was developed by Apostle, and with its help they will quickly recover the photos. He continued that this way they would find out whose memories were true. Roro, watching each percent load, asked for her to be there. The installation was completed, and Roro looked at the phone with a surprised face. Roro started crying, and said that this was great happiness. Roro appeared in the photo, which means it was all for real. Hyaki snapped his fingers again, to stop the hypnosis. Natsumi was surprised that she passed out for a short time. Looking at Roro, she asked what was wrong with Roro and why she was crying. Natsumi started blaming Hyaki for everything, and he replied that he didn't do anything to her. Meanwhile, the apostle, watching them, said that Hyaki had overdone it. She asked if there was any point in doing this. The apostle continued that in the end, she is just bait. At the same time, Hyaki and Roro continued their journey by car. Roro said she wanted to spend more time with her friends. Hyaki replied that there was nothing to be done about it, because they had a long way to go, and in any case, they never recognized her. He continued to make Roro happy that Natsumi tolerated her chatter, given her personality. Roro said she couldn't even think about the fact that their memories were distorted by hypnosis. She assumed that this was done by the people who were responsible for the destruction of her parents. She added that they also distorted the memories of her friends. Roro also said that it was as if they were trying to destroy the very fact of her existence. Roro began to shake and Maru looked at her with a sympathetic look. Suddenly, something caught Maru's attention to become more aggressive. Maru started barking and Roro asked what came over him. Hyaki told Maru to calm down, because they were in the car, and they would deal with it later. The guy stood by the road looking at the car where Hyaki and Roro were driving. Hyaki said that this man seems to need help. The guy thanked them for agreeing to give him a ride, because he no longer knew what to do. Hyaki asked if this often happens to him, and the guy replied that when he is focused on one goal, he gets lost in space. Roro thought the sword looked super suspicious on the guy. The guy said that no matter what, it must be fate. He continued that as the saying goes, those who are destined to meet are united by the invisible red. The guy said that he knows another saying that a meeting is the beginning of separation. He continued that the other one is better, that it's better not to get used to it if you break up. Hyaki said that people are immortal, and all living things are destined to leave the world, sooner or later. Hyaki asked why he was waiting for them. Hyaki continued so that the guy doesn't try to get out, and his little furry friend is even more like him. The guy replied that it turns out that from the very beginning Hyaki understood who he was. The guy also said that he was waiting for them, because he knew that they were somewhere nearby, and Roro shouted out that she was sure of her suspicions. The guy suggested that in this case, let's get down to business. Having attacked with Hyaki's blade, he added that he was slowly losing his patience. The blade was rapidly approaching Hyaki's temple. Hyaki blocked the blow with his hand, and the blade pierced her. The guy looked at what Hyaki had done with a blank face. Hyaki just continued to block, and smiled at the guy. Hyaki suddenly began to press his foot on the gas pedal. The car suddenly turned towards the forest. Hyaki continued to turn his steering wheel to the right to drive into the forest. Hyaki suddenly attacked the guy with his prosthetic, but he dodged. The guy pressed the door handle and fell out of the car. He landed on his feet not far from the car. He also said that Hyaki makes such a driver. Hyaki replied that he doesn't even have a license, so it's not surprising. Hyaki also said that more importantly, it was mean to attack him while he was driving, and because of him the girl was passed out. The guy apologized and said that everything went a little wrong, because how could he pass by such a delicious prey? Hyaki said he sounds like some kind of hungry animal. The guy replied that he was practically right about the hungry beast. Grabbing his sword, the guy suggested starting the fight. Hyaki, opening his blade, agreed with the guy's proposal. The guy attacked and shouted that in this case, he would not hold back. Hyaki counter-attacked him, but he ducked under Hyaki's blow. Unexpectedly, the guy asked to stop because he received a call. He said that he needed to answer the phone, and that Hyaki should continue with him for a minute. The guy answered Susie that everything was fine, and the kind man agreed to give him a ride. He also said that he is a little busy right now, and added that he is not doing anything dangerous. And the guy also added that he doesn't refuse, and looked at Hyaki. Hyaki showed an okay sign with his hands so that the guy would hurry up for urgent matters. Understanding Hyaki's sign, the guy told Susie that he would be there in a minute. Hyaki watched with incomprehension as the guy quickly ran to his younger sister Susie. Meanwhile, Maki stood and tried to call someone, but every time she was told that the subscriber was busy or temporarily unavailable. She was told the same thing again when she tried to call again. Meki thought to herself that this Tanasuke decided to let her down again. She continued that this guy, who has poor geographic orientation, also doesn't answer calls. Maki said she'll have to come up with something else, and maybe she should look for a replacement. Suddenly someone called out to her and said that it was a gorgeous car, just like the lady herself. The guy said that she must be crazy if she decided to ride here on such a swallow. He asked the beauty why she was so angry now. The three of them offered to replace her boyfriend, who offended her dignity. They also added that she would have a blast, and she wouldn't regret it. Maki said it's true what they say. The end justifies the means. She added that the boys were very lucky, because she was just planning to have a party. Maki also said that she planned to invite all her friends there. But she asked them one favor, that they could make her. Maki showed photos of old friends to Roro and told them to personally convey the invitation to these two. Meanwhile, the apostle insulted Hyaki, calling him like a blockhead, a sea cucumber, a sea squirt, an anemone. She also added that she will never forgive Hyaki for this. Apostle said it's only been a day since he borrowed her car, but the scratches on it are already terrible. Hyaki said that he would buy her some souvenirs so that she would stop whining, and the apostle added that he should buy many different souvenirs. Sleepy Roro woke up and asked if they had arrived yet. Hyaki said that she woke up in time because they were almost there. He asked her why she wanted to visit this place before going to the laboratory. Roro replied that she just wanted to check something. Hyaki said he doesn't know what Roro wants to check, but she will soon. The car stopped and Hyaki said that they had already arrived. Hyaki told her to be on guard, but Roro ran forward without listening. Roro thought to herself that at the end of the road was the house where she lived with her parents. She continued that she knew that all that was left of him was ashes, but she still had a desire to see. After all, lately she had been learning a lot of things about herself from others. She remembered how Natsumi told her about Roro's death 3 years ago. Roro also remembered how the apostle told her that there was no information that her parents had a child. She said that every time this happened, she had the feeling that all her memories were fake. She also added that if she sees this with her own eyes, then everything will be fine again. Continuing to look, Roro said that this place is the most vivid evidence of everything that happened to her. Meanwhile, Hyaki finally approached Roro along with Maru. Hyaki said that he expected something similar to what is now. Hyaki added that they had indeed cleaned up everything that in any way indicated its existence. Roro fell to the ground and said that now there really was nothing left. She continued, which is logical, people who went so far as to erase the memories of loved ones would definitely not leave ashes behind them. Roro also asked why they are trying so hard to destroy the very fact of her existence. She asked if they really thought that if they got rid of all the evidence, the truth would just disappear while she was alive. Roro said that she would never let this mistake get away with her, and would stubbornly fight for her life. She continued that sooner or later she would take revenge on them for all the pain they caused. Roro also said that she will never forget this blow to her. On her knees, Roro began to cry and repeated that she would never forget this. Hyaki said they had to go, and there would probably be more leads in the lab. He added that he understands how difficult it is for her, but he needs to move on. Roro thanked Hyaki because she would never have decided to come here alone. But Roro asked if he really had nothing to do with that person. She apologized for such a question and said that it was strange because they have the same face and even names. Roro asked what must be happening. She's just being paranoid. Hyaki wanted to answer her, but suddenly Maru barked due to the presence of someone. In the distance, they saw a silhouette in a cloak approaching them. The guy said that it's better not to get used to it than to part, but fate brought them together again. Hyaki said that as far as he can see, this time he is not lost. Tanasuke said that fortunately, the route was well explained to him. He also said to let him introduce himself properly. He called himself a demon thug, and his name was Tanasuke. Tanasuke also said that he is here to finish what he started. Tanasuke asked why they were looking at him so strangely. Hyaki said that he has no shame or conscience, he comes and goes, and now you demand a fight again. Tanasuke apologized for his rudeness, because his sister was incredibly worried about him, so he was obliged to calm her down. Hyaki asked, then what does he think about retreating to a safe place, as his sister wishes? Tanasuke said that although it's not entirely his fault, he's just fulfilling an order. He continued that he has since learned that Hyaki is the strongest opponent, who managed to survive the bloody wars, hundreds of years ago. Tanasuke said he was eager to find out what it tasted like. He proposed to fight Hyaki man-to-man, until one of them was destroyed. Hyaki asked why he couldn't help but feel like he'd run into some kind of pervert. A little later, Roro was bored and watched every sword strike. Tanasuke said that even though he had already seen Hyaki in action last time, he was still amazed at his body, even though he had used a weapon. Hyaki asked if he was so envious, why not do the same with his body? Hyaki said that besides, he does not dare to say now that he is pleased with what he saw. Hyaki shouted that he still had an ace up his sleeve. Tanasuke shouted at him to show him everything he could do. Roro asked why he got so much joy over a little thing. Roro said Hyaki said they had to go, and now she's having fun with this guy. Roro added that there is one good thing about this situation, it doesn't look like Hyaki is going to lose. Suddenly, she remembered the image of Hyaki that she had seen before. Roro became ill, and Maru also began to sympathize and worry about her. Roro said that now that she thinks about it, she doesn't remember the subsequent events after she ran away from them. Roro suggested that her own memories were fragmentary. Meanwhile, Hyaki and Tanasuke continued to fight each other. Hyaki swung his prosthetic blade to strike Tanasuke, but Tanasuke dodged both blades, with which he tried to damage Hyaki. Hyaki jumped on Tanasuke, and Tanasuke shouted that things were getting interesting. They crossed their blades and began to crush each other. Hyaki continued to press that a bright light appeared from the battlefield. Roro shielded herself from the shock wave that came from their strike. Continuing to press the blades, Hyaki asked who Tanasuke was working for. Tanasuke replied that this was not the right time for interrogation. He continued that ever since he first heard stories about Hyaki, he had dreamed of this moment. Tanasuke began to tell that he had been unfairly deprived from the moment of his birth. And he stubbornly fought for his life, proving that he was stronger than cruel fate and for hundreds of years he has been destroying demons. Tanazuke asked how he could not admire Hyaki. Then Hyaki said that no one admires him, and Tanazu is just talking nonsense. Hyaki added that he can see from his face that he simply wants to destroy him. Tanazuke replied that there is nothing more exciting than putting an end to the legend with one's own hands. Tanazuke suddenly grabbed his sword by the blade with his hand. He also threw Hyaki away from him with the shock wave. Tanazuke attacked Hyaki to end the legend. Hyaki dodged and ran to the side near Tanazuke. Tanazuke said that it would be good to kill a legend and become one yourself. Hyaki, standing behind Tanazuke, said that here you can see. Suddenly, Hyaki plunged his hand straight into Tanazuke's heart. Hyaki said that the legend is just an empty phrase. He continued that because with death everything comes to an end. Tanazuke repeated his words that with death everything comes to an end. He continued that this is only if he leaves the world. Roro, worried about him, shouted Hyaki's name while looking at him. Tanazuke pierced his stomach with his sword, and the blade also hit Hyaki. Hyaki leaned back sharply after such a blow from Tanazuke. Hyaki told them not to worry, because the wound is not deep. Hyaki continued that from the very beginning he thought there was something strange about him. He added that Tanazuke, as expected, is not as simple as it seems. Tanazuke said that he is the same being as Hyaki, who is not destined to die. Roro asked if that meant he was immortal, and Hyaki said no, just a little like him. Hyaki asked about the energy that comes from Tanazuke's sword. Tanazuke said that this is a Nailu, a cursed sword that absorbs lives. Tanazuke continued that this was his old friend, from whom he ultimately suffered. Roro asked how he came to this conclusion and Hyaki told her not to pay attention to him. Tanazuke wanted to tell a story about his Nikhil, and suddenly, Hyaki's phone rang. Tanazuke wanted to talk about his first meeting with Nikhil, and Hyaki ignored him and answered on the phone that everything was fine. Hyaki handed the phone to Roro and said that this was the apostle, and asked him to give Roro his hand. The apostle asked if she could be heard, and Roro replied that she could, and asked what the apostle wanted from her. The apostle said that some photo was uploaded here on the darknet. She said she thought Roro needed to see this picture. Roro saw a photo of Mecha smiling with her old friends. Meanwhile, that same late night, in the distance stood a house with a beautiful yard. Trained and armed people walked around him, guarding the house. Suddenly, Tanazuke appeared from their backs and attacked them. He hit the men on the necks so they would just pass out for a while. Tanazuke asked if Meki had placed too many people here. Tanazuke added that besides, they were forbidden to be destroyed, so all that remains is to make them lose consciousness. He also said that after all, it was Mr. Hyaki's request. At the same time, Roro screamed at Hyaki to let her go. Hyaki tried to calm her down, but Roro replied that there was no way to calm down. She also shouted that this witch had grabbed her friends, and if they didn't hurry up, then who knows what could happen to them. Hyaki said that's why he's telling her to calm down, because this is a provocation, and she's already been defeated once. He added that Maki was definitely up to something, and it was very problematic if she decided to involve civilians in this matter, as before. Hyaki also said that if she breaks in mindlessly, both she and her friends will get hurt. Roro said that if she hesitates, it will be too late, just like then. She didn't want to have to regret it later, and Tanazuke interrupted her, saying that the hostages would be fine. Tanazuke apologized for interrupting them, because he just heard that they were talking about something that he understands. He also added that if Roro is her goal, then the hostages will be fine for a while, because Meki is especially warm towards girls. Roro angrily asked if he knew this woman, who was hunting her. Tanazuke replied that in the end, it was she who gave him this order, and Roro accused him of being in league with her. Tanazuke said that in truth, he doesn't really care how they decide to act. Roro said that they were going with Hyaki to save them, and Tanazuke replied that Mr. Hyaki would fight him. Roro started to get angry, telling him to fight himself, and Hyaki tried to calm Roro down. Hyaki asked if Tanosuke wanted to fight him properly, and Tanosuke replied that that was correct. Hyaki continued that in this case, Tanosuke would help them. Hyaki added that if the guy helps them, he will fight him for real. Tanosuke said that as expected from Mr. Hyaki, he easily found what the enemy wanted, and used it against him. The guard who was waiting for the moment to attack Tanosuke got a sword in his face. Throwing his sword, Tanosuke said that he must be on guard against Hyaki. Tanosuke was already impatient to meet Hyaki in battle. Suddenly, Tanosuke's phone rang, but he was clearly not happy about the call. Tanosuke asked if Meki already knew everything, and she replied that it was cruel of Tano. Maki continued that she could not even think that he would betray her so quickly. Tanosuke replied that he would not have betrayed him if she had not distracted him from the battle with Mr. Hyaki. Maki said that it was his own fault for not answering her calls, and invited him to join her. Tanosuke replied that he no longer carried out her orders, and was now carrying out orders from Mr. Hyaki. Tanosuke hit a tree with his sword to scare the guards. Tanosuke continued the conversation that the hostages remind him of his younger sister. Maki became disgusted with him and his sister complex. Tanosuke told her that it was time for him to hang up, because he was a little busy. Meanwhile, the guards attacked Tanosuke to destroy him. Maki said that he knows how to have fun like an adult, and anyway, Hyaki and the kitten are on their way. Putting down the phone, she said that for now she would just have to wait. She asked Roro's old friends if they would play together now. Natsumi, sitting next to her crying friend, asked who she was. Natsumi asked what she needed from them, and Meki replied that she didn't need anything from them. Maki also said that they were just bait to lure out his adorable kitten. She added that, like bait, all they have to do is sit still and wait to be swallowed. Natsumi sat in a complete stupor and did not understand what the woman was talking about. Meki called out to someone, telling him to get ready because Hyaki and the girl would be here soon. Natsumi asked herself what it meant to be swallowed and what she meant. She continued that this man sat in the corner all the time, and even when he sits, he looks so huge. She also asked herself what the big guy was eating there. Natsumi tried to encourage Haruka to hold on, and hoped that the police would be here soon. Haruka cried, and tried to say something through Natsumi's tears. Haruka said that this big guy actually eats a person. Natsumi was scared, and was also now in panic and stupor from what she heard. Maki confirmed and said it was time for the big guy to earn his lunch. The big man just started repeating the words that he needed meat. Meanwhile, Hyaki, Maru and Roro were already in a hurry to save their friends. Roro said that his plan to break straight through the central ones was a failure, and Hyaki replied that this strategy had been proven over the years. Roro continued that he was talking about civil war methods, but now is not the time. She also added that this guy should not have been trusted, and his stupid promises. Hyaki said that thanks to him, now no one is blocking their way. Hyaki also suggested that they focus on business. With his foot, Hyaki knocked down the central gate that led to the house. Upon landing, he saw that there were a lot of guards around the house. But with clear blows to the neck to disable everyone, he continued to run. Hyaki also ordered Maru to protect the defenseless Roro. Maru started crawling up Roro's leg, and she asked what Maru was doing. Maru continued to take over Roro's body to protect her. After a while, some guy hit some black tentacles. The owner of these black and red tentacles turned out to be Roro, who continued to walk. Roro asked in complete bewilderment what was happening now. Roro asked why she and Maru suddenly stuck together, because now they move as Maru wants. Hyaki explained that the apostle improved it a little, especially for her because Roro herself was too weak. Hyaki told her to stop freaking out and come to him. He also added that he sensed the presence of Maki demons in this building. Hyaki continued that apparently she wants to lure them there, and if so, he sees no reason to keep her waiting. Hyaki suddenly jumped high up and looked at some window. A moment later, he flew through the window with both feet first. He landed and said that so far everything was going according to plan. Roro also climbed up to him, but landed poorly. Hyaki said it was an interesting experience for Roro, and she told him to shut up. Maki called out and said that there was their kitten and it looked amazing. Maki said she thought she'd have to wait forever. Maki continued that to think that she came running so quickly, for the sake of these two. Maki also added that she is even a little jealous because of this. Roro asked why she was dragging her friends into this matter, who had nothing to do with it. Maki replied that she was just hunting a little. Maki also asked if Roro herself was to blame for this, since she didn't even try to hide her closeness with these two. Roro asked if she wanted to say that all this was happening because they just met. Maki replied that of course, all this was happening precisely because of her. Hyaki interrupted Meki and told her to shut up. He asked since when the rabbit is to blame for the wolf's bloodthirstiness. Hyaki asked to stop blaming others because it makes him sick. Hyaki asked if she could imagine the man behind her. Maki said she tried so hard to hide his presence. She added that they better start worrying, because she called him specifically to greet them. Roro asked if she brainwashed some huge sumo wrestler. The man started screaming that he wanted more meat. The man had turned into a huge monster, and was now standing over Hyaki and Roro.